Hey, welcome back. This is Edgar from Hard to Guard TV. I have one of my favorite coaches. He was only there for 2 years, and I was at the Garden for a very long time. Coach Rasheed Hazzard. What's up, Coach?
Life is good, man. How are you? How are you, EB, man? Good to see you.
I'm good, man. Surviving during this COVID, man. Just trying to make it.
Going from seeing you a couple nights a week, then I don't see you at all, man.
I know we lost. We just lost.
It's a tough business. It's how the business is.
Yeah, real quick, what you thought about the draft?
I thought the draft order that just happened, that was interesting. I think, Golden State has an interesting opportunity. They can trade that pick. They can pick a young player and continue to build, for the future. It's interesting. I want to see what they're going to do. Minnesota, same thing. Minnesota has a lot of good young talent. Do they add to it, or do they go out and try to get another veteran piece and give that pick to a team that, is looking to have that youth movement? It's going to be interesting. I don't think anybody can call this draft.
As a coach, obviously you was coaching overseas in Japan. Do you stay on top of college basketball and knowing like who the top 5, top 7 players should be in the draft?
I know probably closer to the top 3 or 4. And then I know who a couple of good players are, because a lot of times, the draft predictions are very inaccurate, as we've seen over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You got guys like Donovan Mitchell who slipped into later in the lottery. Going back in the day, you had guys like Gilbert Arenas who went, way later in the draft when they should have. And so it's such an imperfect science. I try to appreciate the talent of these young players, but I don't get into trying to guess where they're going to go and what their future is going to be. But I can tell you what they need to work on to be whatever they should be trying to become. I can tell you the skills and the things they need to lock in on so they can become the player they can possibly be.
Yeah, I see my Knicks. We dropped down to 8. So
yeah,
it's the luck of the team.
It's been tough, man. I haven't been there. I have a special affection for New York after coaching there, man. It was a special time. Having coached in Staples Center and then Madison Square Garden, as my 2 main jobs. But it was just, the fans in New York are so great, and I'm looking forward to the day that they get the team that they deserve, and it's coming. They're working.
I like this new regime. I think they're going to be on point.
Yeah, and I thought the last regime did some good things to kind of set the table, maybe a little bit for them. Obviously that was tough with the situation with Porzingis. Whenever you have a player of that caliber, that wants out, it's hard to figure those things out. I was fortunate in my first year with the Lakers. That was the next summer. That was the summer that Kobe was like, I want, give me, I think we wanted Jason Kidd for Bynum or somebody. He was a little unhappy with the direction of the team, but Dr. Buss was able to come in and talk to him, and they had a good enough relationship where they could smooth things over. And, he obviously proved himself and put the team around him for us to get, 2 more rings. And so I think I look forward to the day that the Knicks figure that out. I think it'll happen.
So if you had a choice right now, with the Knicks with the 8th pick, what are you looking at if you're paying attention?
At that pick, you just really, you want to try to find the best player available, but you also want to try to, they have so many needs right now that you just want to try to find not only the best player available, but they also need to build a culture. So they need to get somebody who's going to fit, the ideal of whatever their culture is that they're trying to build now. Because obviously when the regime changes, the philosophies change. And so they're going to have to find a guy that fits what they're trying to build. And I think they have the right people to do that.
Now, you've been around, a great organization like the Lakers. You've been around the Knicks. Like, when people talk about culture, can you explain what culture means to you? Because when you talk, I don't know, when I talk to my friends, everyone has a different opinion.
I can just give you
what culture means.
My role within, the culture is just that consistency every day at doing the things that it takes to be great. And as a coach, that's showing up and being in the building early, being available for players whenever they want to get shots up, or when they want information or they want to watch film. It's the attitude that you bring to work every day. You know, it's not just the way you treat the other coaches and the players and then like the GMs and the guys that can affect your paycheck, but it's how I interact with you at every game. You know, my relationship with you was as important as these other relationships, you know, because you're kind of the lifeblood of the culture of what New York is all about. And I think, you know, that next coach that comes in needs to tap into that, because the culture is not just what you build within the organization. It's also tapping into the culture of whatever city you're in, you know, and in New York, man, it's that tough, gritty, hard-working dudes, you know. Even the dudes on Wall Street got that gritty thing about them a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like a New York thing, and you got to come in and you have to embrace that. And when they talk about culture, that's a big part of it. It's not just what you build within your building, but it's also being able to embrace and let the right parts of the culture of the city you're in bleed into the fabric of your team and into the psyche and attitude. And I thought that was something that having been in New York, having been a part of a regime that did not do well, you know, I'm a part of our failure to do that. But I recognize it, and we all did. It's really tough to do. That's why it doesn't happen all the time.
So I want to talk about, you know, your love of the game, and I'm going to take it back with you from, you know, when you grew up in LA and you playing at Venice, you know, and, you know, what made you fall in love with basketball?
I think it really started before that. You know, my dad's first coaching job was at Compton College. A lot of people don't know that. And, you know, I think because I was a pretty energetic kid, I think my mom was, you know, trying to find a way to keep me with my dad because I needed that male energy, like probably more than anybody. And so luckily there was a preschool right next to the gym at Compton College, right on campus. And it was literally like steps from the gym. And I remember riding every day. We jumped in the Cadillac every morning, you know, at 7 in the morning. We jumped on the 10 freeway, and it was when they had the long bench seat. And my dad used to play his jazz on the radio, and I used to sit right next to him in that middle seat. I didn't sit all the way on the far side. I sat in that middle seat trying to maybe get some of that greatness by osmosis or something. And, you know, we would listen to jazz, and he would talk about basketball, and you know, you could just feel his love for the game. It exuded out of him. And I think it just, a lot of that crept into me because I was, like I said, with him during that time. And I was with him every day going to practice. And I didn't take naps because there was no way they would get me to take a nap. So I went in the gym during nap time. You know, I was that kid. So I was running around, rebounding balls for kids. And then when he got the job at UCLA, is I think this is what took it over the top. You know, he had Reggie Miller at UCLA, and for whatever reason, Reggie and I had this connection. And I stretched him before a game early in our first season there, and he shot the ball. He just balled out. He played phenomenal. After that, I stretched him before every game he played at UCLA because he insisted that I be the one to stretch him and then rebound for him. And it was a daily routine that we went through. And I knew at a young age that I wasn't really thinking about NBA. I wanted to be a pro, but I knew I wanted to be a college player. I knew I wanted to play Division I basketball at like a high level, like a UCLA. And so my love really started, you know, on those rides to Compton College with my dad and going to those practices every day and then going to those games. And you know, it was crazy. It was like a madhouse. You know, it was like, you know, it was unbelievable energy, and the way the community in Compton rallied around that team. You know, you had everybody in the stands, man. You had the gangsters, you had the business guys, the people my dad knew, former NBA players. It was just like such a beautiful mix, and I think just the combination of all those things just made me fall in love with it. You met kids from different cultures. You know, it brought all different races together. There was none of that when you stepped between those lines. It didn't matter if you were, you know, a rich kid, if you were a middle-class kid, if you were a poor kid. Man, when we went and they rolled that ball out, it was just a camaraderie that we all had through competition. And I fell in love with that early.
So, you play in Venice. You work your way up to get a D1 scholarship, and you play for the great Mike Jarvis at George Washington University. How was that whole recruiting process for you?
My recruiting process was pretty straightforward with Coach Jarvis. They really got into my recruiting pretty late. My dad the schools that I was looking at academically weren't really on the level that we expected. I was a really good student, honor student in high school, took AP classes, and he just didn't really like my choices. And I think we were watching the NCAA tournament, as a matter of fact, and we saw GW, and he's like, I'm gonna give Mike a call. I don't know who Mike is. I just see this little bald guy screaming on television, sends in my tape. I had a great game against Oak Hill that Christmas. Had like 29 points or something like that. Curtis Staples was on another team. Tariq Turner, Mark Blunt, the big guy that went to Pittsburgh. And I think that kind of put me over the hump. I went on a visit. Once I saw I had a king-size bed and I had my own room, they didn't have to sell me anymore. It was like, hey, where do I sign? And I had a great experience at GW. I learned a lot. I had a tough go of it as a player, mostly due to my injuries. I had a knee surgery right after my senior year in high school. A lot of people don't know. Played my senior year with bone spurs under my kneecap. Was gonna have them removed before the season, but me and my dad sat and talked. I was like, I feel like I'm pretty good against these dudes right now, even if I'm hobbling. So, let's roll the dice and see what happens. Ended up at GW, but I had 4 knee operations during my college career. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't, I wasn't a guy that you could really count that was going to be there and be healthy every game. And so I think that really affected my minutes. Coach Jarvis and I had some tough moments in our relationship also, personally, over some things that we've long since put in the past. I went to his when he went to the Hall of Fame at GW, but those experiences, they taught me a lot and they made me grow up really fast. Also, my dad had a stroke that almost killed him at the end of my sophomore season. I was home for spring break, and my mom woke me up. I ran over to check on him, and he couldn't talk, and so I ended up missing about a month of school. And it was that support that I got when I got back from my teammates, from a woman named Karen Urcole, who was our academic advisor. And, it was those experiences, man, and those things that really had an impact on me. I always knew I was going to do something in basketball, whether I was fortunate enough to stay healthy and become a pro, or whether I was going to become a coach. But you have to remember, I watched my dad put that suit on. I used to put his suit jackets on when he was, on the weekends, when he was out hanging out, and I always saw myself walking that sideline. And even as a player, I think a lot of my teammates would tell you I had a lot of coaching qualities, even as a player. And I tried to lead in that way. And so I think my experience at GW definitely shaped my career as a coach. And like I said, a lot of it, some people would say were negative experiences that I dealt with Coach Jarvis. But I want all these young players to realize, we're just fortunate to do what we do. So whatever experience you get from the game, if you're not okay with the experience that you're having, you have the right to transfer and go somewhere else, which I did. By choosing to stay, I don't now have the right to go back and vilify this man and talk about how bad he was, because I chose to stay there and fight whatever battles I needed to fight because I felt like it would help me grow as a man. Mm-hmm. And while I didn't appreciate the things that were happening then, I look at some of those experiences different now, having coached now 20 years myself and having been in charge of some young careers. And so, my GW days were unbelievable in how they shaped me. I had Red Auerbach was our alumnus, and he is one of the first people that actually told me he thought I was going to be a coach. And that was during my GW day. He used to play racquetball with Wolf Blitzer.
You grew up, your dad, was a coach at UCLA. Obviously, he was a great player at back in the days with UCLA, played with, Lou Alcindor, who is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. How did that, shape you? You've been around Phil Jackson. You've been around some of the greatest coaches of all time. And, obviously you grew up young. John Wooden was around, so I'm pretty sure you got to meet him a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, that, of course, that growing up that way shaped us. We grew up with the pyramid of success. We all had one. I have 3 older brothers. We all had a pyramid of success. It was up on the wall. It was on our table at breakfast, like an actual glass pyramid. Those guys that played for Coach Wooden, they lived what he taught, and the things they learned and that culture that they were a part of. And, you look at Luke Walton and what he got from Bill, and Kareem Jr. and what he got from his dad. They taught, and Chris Johnson, they taught all of us those same qualities. And so, my dad having been the person who started the championship run in 1964, he was actually before Kareem. My dad played on the team where they had the 6'5" center, nobody over 6'5", and they pressed the whole game. And they actually beat Tex Winter's Kansas State team in the Final Four that year. I love basketball history as well, so I'll go off sometimes, so excuse me. But going back to your point, having been around and grown up around that culture, and been around Kareem and been around Lucius Allen, Jamal Wilkes, Mike Warren, Marcus Johnson, these are people that are family to me. This is a part of my family. And so, you had to get some of that. You had to get some of those qualities. You had to see it. You had to learn it. Otherwise, you wasted the teachings that my parents were trying to instill in us. They put those people around us because they believed in that village. That African proverb, it takes a village. And our village was all these great champions. And there's no question that this had a huge impact on who I am today as a coach, but also a lot of the decisions I made on my journey as a coach.
So as a coach, can you tell me one thing you've learned from Red Auerbach, John Wooden, Phil Jackson, and obviously your dad?
The biggest thing that's consistent with all of those guys being great champions, I think, it's their attention to detail. There's no detail too minor to teach, to talk about, and that attention to detail, it goes not only from basketball, but into life, in terms of, they wanted to help all their players, not only be more attentive to detail in the gym, but they all believe that also carried over into their family lives and the way they raised their children and in the way they interacted with the average person on the street. And so I would say probably 2 things, the details, and I can say for me, it was always joy going to work when I worked for Phil, especially. Like, you look forward, like it was almost like a movie for me, man. It was like, what's this dude going to reveal to me today? Like, what is he going to teach me that I don't know today? And then I had Brian Shaw, I had Frank Hamlin, I had Jim Clemens, I had Kurt Rambis, who, when I got my high school job, first job I ever got, I go to Kurt, I'm like, man, I'm getting into coaching. He's like, all right, when you have a job, come back. I came back and said, I'm the head coach at Venice. And he printed all of his basketball books for me. And anytime I came over to practice, Kurt and B. Shaw and Jim Clemens and Frank Hamlin, they always, and Tex Winter especially, always took the time to sit down with me and ask me about my experience as a coach. And, that had a lasting impact on me. And it's what I try to do with other young coaches. It's a difficult thing to do because I am a younger coach. I haven't accomplished the things those gentlemen have accomplished in my career. I think I've done okay, but there's a lot more for me to do. And so, I try to lend an ear and always be a person that's open for information to young coaches. But I'm also very careful in how much information I give or how I give it, because it's important to allow them to develop their own character as well. And that was the opportunity I got. And so I'd hate to cheat another coach out of that by forcing my information on him and trying to make him do it my way. Phil didn't do that to me. Red didn't do that. Coach Wooden, My dad never insisted I play like him, coach like him. You know, it was just, they just gave information and they let you do what you please with it.
Now, there's a story I know when your dad caught a stroke back in 1996, that the Lakers, you know, obviously back then, you know, health insurance and stuff was a problem, you know, with some people and stuff like that. But the Lakers did something big for you guys, your family, to make sure you guys can stay.
I wear this ring because the Lakers for us, and I've worked for other teams and will continue to, but the Lakers, Dr. Buss, you know, Jeannie, you know, Jim Buss, everybody, all of them, Joey Buss, all those guys were so wonderful to us during that time. My dad had a stroke and his contract was expiring. He was actually, Dale Harris was the head coach and was one of his best friends and was really the person who brought my dad back into the league. And I think he had an opportunity to possibly even be on Dale's bench and maybe move up a level going into that next season. But that April, as you said, he had a stroke. And we're at the hospital. And, you know, a lot of nerves. Didn't know if he was going to make it at one point. It was about a 2-week period, but we didn't know he was going to make it. But during that period, at about the end of the first week, Jerry West shows up at the hospital. And he and my dad were really, really good friends. And he had been to visit him. But this time he came and he had like a small case with him. And my older brother, Yakub, is an attorney. And my mom and, you know, they went into the room. And make a long story short, Dr. Buss basically gave my dad a lifetime contract for as long as he was going to be alive. Gave my dad 4 season tickets. He had valet parking when he came to the game. He had an all-access pass to go into the locker room. You know, Phil let him come to practice every day, and he sat there next to him between, you know, it'd be my dad, it'd be me, and then it'd be Tex Winter, and then it'd be Phil. And so I was just that little, you know, fly on the wall collecting information. But all of that came from Dr. Buss. And, you know, not only just forget how great of an owner he is, he's just such a wonderful man. And what he did for our family at that time, it was really life-changing. And it probably, in a lot of ways, you know, saved us from probably some hardships. And we're going to be forever grateful, you know, to him and his entire family and to that Lakers organization for how they treated my father. You know, the people, the red coats, all the people that worked around the court, you know, everybody who worked in security, you know, they looked out for my dad. They cleared paths for him. I mean, it was just, you know, it gives me chills now to think about it. You know, I think about Wilma, who used to work at the tunnel right at the end of our bench, you know, and how great she treated my entire family, but especially my dad. And that just came from Dr. Buss and Magic Johnson, who had a great relationship with my dad, and Jerry West, you know, just being phenomenal human beings. That's all I can say.
So in 2005-06, you finally get an opportunity to work for the Lakers part-time.
It was unbelievable how that happened. I had just done 5 years as a high school coach. Finally got my break to be a college coach at University of Portland. I'm with Michael Holton. We had a Pooh Jeter, kid named Darren Cooper, Donald Wilson. I mean, we had some good players. Jamie Jones, Marcus Lewis, Marcus Carr. I could name all these guys. Jeremiah Dominguez. We had this great team. But we had a new AD come in, and it was my first year. They were 15-15 the year before, and we didn't perform the way I think they expected us to that next year. So at the end of my first season, they fired everybody. So here I am, I'm back home, and I just went back to what I had done. When I was a high school coach, I wasn't a teacher. All I was a walk-on coach. So I used to go to school for practice, but during the day, I took care of my dad. Took him to the gym, worked him out, took him to Laker practice. That's how I got to eavesdrop. So, you know, so I did that. So I came back home, you know, I just fell right back into, you know, let me take care of my man and hang out and, you know, just absorb some more of that greatness, you know. And we would go to the Laker facility every day because he's a basketball junkie. You know, he just wants to watch guys. We're watching Bynum and Chris Mim work out on one end, and it's like Sasha Vujacic, a couple other guys on the other end. and Brian Shaw's on one end and Kurt's on the other, and Kurt Rambis. And, they're a little older now, and they're trying to rebound the ball, and they're, certain drills, they're having to chase the ball around, and they're making the players run and get it. So one day I just offered my services. Hey, I'll rebound for you guys. They say being in the right place at the right time. So I just would run end to end, whoever needed me. I'm just rebounding basketball. Couple weeks into it, maybe 3 weeks into it, Kurt and B. Shaw had to go on vacation. So they left for vacation, and I ended up just doing the workouts they showed me. And from doing those workouts, Tex Winter would sit on the sideline and watch me work. Then he would sit down with me after the workout and talk to me about coaching and tell me he thought I was a good coach and and then he'd walk with me on the court, show me the triangle. I didn't know why he was doing this stuff. Maybe he thought I was getting hired. I had no clue. Went through that. Training camp comes, and I actually showed up for the first day of training camp, and they wouldn't let me in the building. And so, because it was very secure. It wasn't anything personal. I hadn't been hired. I was just kind of working with guys. And so Mitch Kupchak, who was great to me, he didn't have me like on the list to be allowed in. And so the person who actually got me in the building, who got me through the gate, was Kobe. And then Gary Vitti came out, Gary Vitti actually was my strength coach basically in college. Mm-hmm. I used to lift weights with him in the offseason with him and Byron Scott and Lou Ferrigno. Wow. So Vitti comes out and gets me, and they finally take me in. And so I just keep showing up every day. I'm going to be here every day. I show up. They let me in the building. Brian Shaw, Jim Clemens, and Kurt Rambis, they said, just keep showing up until they tell you to stop coming back. So I showed up. They go through the preseason. They didn't have an advanced scout. So Tex Winter had taken a liking to me, and I started kind of working with a guy named Dan Panaggio. They were going to have a D League at the time team coming in. And so, I spent all this time talking to Tex. He took a liking to me. Brian Shaw, Jim Clemens, and the rest of the assistant coaches needed an advanced scout. I was there. I played college ball. I had a working knowledge of the game. So they, went and fought for me and got me a part-time advanced scouting job where I got paid $250 a game. Wow. I'm at these games. I'm doing scouting reports, and they give, I turn my report in. They give me a check for $250 and let me come back to practice and let me be a part of, let me kind of be a part of the peripheral crew. I wasn't really a part of it, but, I was in the building, and that's all I cared about. I knew when to remove myself from certain situations, and it led to me being a part-time advanced scout to being full-time to then being a coaching assistant.
So when they hired you full-time, how did that feel for you? Like,
hey, listen, man, when I signed, I'm from LA. I signed a contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. Like I played it cool, man. I was in Mitch Kupchak's office, and I was cool. Had my shirt buttoned up. Man, when I walked out that building, remember those old Toyota commercials when they used to jump in the air? Hey, I had to look like a fool to whoever was watching me, man. I was ecstatic. It was like like how people probably feel when they win the lottery. I was with my hometown team. I was, doing what I love. Like I dreamed about, and I had always, what's crazy is from the 90s when I was in college, it was the Bulls. I dreamed of working for Phil Jackson. We ran what I call a bastardized version of the triangle in college, but it was Coach Jarvis went and learned some triangle. So we were running like a version of it. So I was kind of familiar with some of the things, but when I actually learned it from Tex and he started to teach me the terminology and the movement, I was blown away by what I didn't know, and looking back, I don't blame Jarvis for not doing it. It's a hard thing to do with the group that we had. And but I'm so grateful for the positions that I've been so fortunate to be in. Like you said, man, just listen to the coaches: Red Auerbach, Tex Winter, John Wooden, Walt Hazzard, Phil Jackson. I've been fortunate to sit in rooms with these guys and talk basketball with these men and have them listen to my ideas and give me ideas and share their thoughts with me. And they're, that's special. And I have to now pay that forward and now do something special with that information they gave me. So it's my job to get that NBA head coaching job, win that NBA championship. That's what I expect of myself.
So 2008, 2009, 2010. Now you're getting your feet more wet.
Yeah.
Now the Lakers go to 3 straight NBA finals. Can you explain that experience?
Is the first one, I'm gonna keep it real with you. Losing it is no fun. There's no joy in that second place. Oh man, we were there. It sucked. And then what made it even worse was Paul Pierce, good friend. We grew up playing together. I played Team K-Swiss, just show you how old I am. For Thaddeus McGrew, we played together.
Old coach.
And so I ended up speaking at Paul Pierce's camp. And this was after he got rolled off on the wheelchair and everything. So, man, we had a good laugh about that when I spoke to his camp. But that was really tough. But what was, I think, life-changing for me was after that season, that Labor Day, that's when I get a phone call. It's that block number. Man, it had to be 2 a.m, EB. I'm telling you, it was late. And I denied it a couple times, finally pick it up. And Kobe was calling. He wanted somebody to show up to help him, get some shots. But he also wanted to do more triangle stuff, because the reason we lost in 2008 was because we got a little away from the triangle, because different reasons. We didn't have the personnel. There was a lot of different reasons we got away from it. But had we stuck to it, I think Kobe felt like we'd had a better chance. And so he wanted to work on more of the shots that came from the triangle, instead of always having to work so hard to get everything. And so he called me, man, and I don't know, we had a prior relationship. Our dads, obviously being from Philly, had a previous relationship. But, he called me and asked me to come in and, rebound for him. Who's going to say no to that, And so that turned into going out to Irvine at night. We'd shoot in the morning. Sometimes I'd go out and watch his track workout just from the stands. And then, he'd text me and tell me, hey, we're going to be at UC Irvine tonight. And Coach Ryan Bedratelli at UCI, the guy who actually ended up offering and signing my nephew, Max Hazzard, at Irvine, was the guy that used to, get us in the gym, who was, Kobe's really good friend and confidant. So, getting that phone call and getting that opportunity, that changed everything. So going into the 2009 season, having been with him through that whole month of September, I had a better understanding myself. And I was a pretty focused person. I think my friends will tell you. But I learned a new level when I got to spend some time in the gym with Kobe. And I learned a new level of standards and just everything. And it really took me to a different place mentally. And he told me some things that also helped me relate to Phil better. He gave me some insight on how I could, it wasn't about being his friend, about how I could get the most out of the relationship, because it was just about, getting information. And we did so happen to end up with a close relationship, but that is not the goal.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I remember when you was coaching with the Knicks, I remember we talked about it real quick. That commitment that Kobe had, you had commitment too, because you would wake up at 2, 3 in the morning, and you said you was doing it not just one day; it was multiple days.
He starts at 5:30, and that doesn't, like most of these guys, they tell you they start at 5:30. They got to the gym at 5:30. First day I showed up for the workout, he told me 5:30. I was in the coach's locker room. I wasn't late. I was there. I didn't hear him come in. All right. So I walk in the gym, and, it's about 5:32 when I walked over, because I didn't hear him. So I'm like, let me make sure he's here. He was already warmed up and like ready to go. Like, hey, where you been, man? I'm like, hey, my bad. Nah, it won't happen again. So whenever he gave me a time, it was 5:30, I was there at 5. And that's just how he was built. When that 2009 season, everybody, when we came into camp, there was no mistake about what our mission was. When we brought our hands together for the first time as a team, Kobe was like, listen, you know what we have to do with this. 1, 2, 3 ring. Anything less is failure. And that's how we proceeded through the season. And everybody raised their level. Pau Gasol came back. He had been in the weight room. That was the summer that I believe Kobe ran through his chest. It's all those things, we just had such a great camaraderie in that group. There was no stopping us that year. I don't care who made it to the finals. Cleveland, Boston, Orlando just happened to be the victim we got. Nobody had a chance. That was our ring.
So obviously you saw Kobe maturing to become this leader. And everyone said, he was a leader. He wasn't. I always thought Kobe, was fearless. Like, can you explain like how he was in the locker room, before games and after games? Because I thought he was, I thought he was the certified leader. Like he would talk to the coaches and talk to the players, and obviously there's no cameras around, and obviously you saw that.
The problem that people have with Kobe's leadership, and it's just like every other leader, LeBron's leadership. They're not leading the way these people want them to lead, but they're not in that locker room every day. And they don't, like you said, they don't see the impact that he has on the guys. No, was he the most vocal guy and goofy and doing all that? No, that wasn't what he was about. But he also didn't stop Lamar Odom from being himself. He didn't stop Andrew. Andrew was a kid. He learned to adapt, and he learned to to go to other guys' levels instead of, he expected everybody to raise their game to his level, right? So his balancing act later was, you would see his moments when he would just grab Andrew and they would just be over there rapping about cars because Andrew was this big car freak. Like, if the crazy part is, let's say you like something, somehow he's going to figure out a way to try to know more about it than you and have a conversation with you. That's how Kobe was wired. Oh, Drew likes cars. I'm going to go learn about cars and then end up talking to him about that. And he related to you in different ways. The way, he and Brian Shaw had a great relationship, and so, B could say probably things to him that other guys couldn't, but people talk about him and Sasha's relationship and how, he kind of went at Sasha. That was like a big brother, little brother situation. These guys you see him throw an elbow at Sasha, but then you don't see him speaking Italian with Sasha to make Sasha feel comfortable and talking to Sasha in Spanish on the court, or when he does that with Pau to speak Spanish, or when we had Sun Yui and he learned some Chinese so that he could make him feel comfortable. So that crap about Kobe's leadership, I don't want to hear it, man. All the experts that have something to say about that, they need to take their butts back to school, man. No, they don't know a damn thing.
So 2009, you win your first ring.
Yep.
As a coach, how's that feel?
Hey, listen, as a coach, is what I got into the business for. But as a kid from LA, hey, listen, man. And we won this one on the road. And Dr. Buss, once again, so my mom and my dad were there because Dr. Buss loaded up a whole, I think maybe 2 planes with our family, immediate family, for everybody to come out so that when we won in Game 5, we could be at the hotel and celebrate together. So I had my mom and my dad there, which made it really special because, they went through everything with me. My mom had 4 boys. So how many games you think my mom has been to? AAU games, and luckily I always played on good teams, and so did my brothers. We were always on really good teams, but she's sat through more basketball. And so to have her there, to be able to experience that moment, and to be able to be there with the players and get some acknowledgement, and for my dad, who is, as you know, I mean, that's why I do this. I'm on a mission for him to get this head coaching job one day and win that NBA championship. And I can't wait. I'm going to carry his picture up there with me, but having them there in 2009, it was nuts. And then we come back and we have a parade. So I take my nephews, man. I was like, all my nephews, they're young, all ball players, Max was, a little shorty at the time. This is 10 years ago, 11 years ago, his brother Jacob, You know, my nephew Tony Holly, he's on there with us. So I take them on the parade route, man, and we're riding down the street, and being from LA, you know, I'm expecting to have fun, but I'm looking down, I'm like, I remember all these people, man, and it was like we were celebrating together. You know, I saw people from elementary school. I saw people I went to Venice High with, that I went to Laces with, people I just grew up in my neighborhood with that, you know, brought kids out there to experience that day. You know, I think I might even see my friend Jerome Bryant, my good friend who grew up 3 houses down, Jeff Lewis, who's the photographer for the Rams, was one of the photographers. So we're out of our minds, man. It was like, it was one of my greatest moments, you know, that I can remember just in my life.
But then you come back following season and you win it again. How hard was it to repeat? Because everyone talks about how more difficult it is the second time than the first time.
You know, from a coaching standpoint, obviously I didn't play, but I saw what these guys went through. It was physically, it was very taxing. You could really see the wear and tear on guys going for that second one. But you know, things just fell our way, actually, you know, that year. You know, the second year we got Ron Artest, who was amazing to bring in. He replaced Trevor Ariza. That was really our only change. You know, we had Josh Powell, who, when you talk about, you know, culture and everything else, you know, it was guys like Josh Powell and Shannon Brown, you know, and those guys and D Fish, you know, those guys who you consider kind of lesser players as far as the star power. Those were the guys that carried us, because when you talk about culture, they kept coming to work every day. DJ Banga kept coming to work and pushing Bynum every day. He pushed him every day to get better. You know, Josh Powell came in and he pushed Lamar. I mean, there was days where Lamar wanted to fight this dude, man, because Josh Powell just a junkyard dog. You know, early in that season, Josh was having a child. His wife was pregnant, and they had a lot of things going on. So he would at times call me 3 or 4 in the morning. You know, like, hey man, I'm up. I'm at the hospital. You know, can I come in and get some shots up early? And so, you know, I come up there and meet him at 6 o'clock one morning, and Kobe was coming in to shoot, and he walked in kind of with a smirk on his face. He's like, oh, hey, what time did you guys get here? And we told him. So we looked at each other. We're like, we're going to come at the same time tomorrow. He's going to be here. Come the next day, 6 o'clock, he's already halfway through his workout talking about where y'all been. It was that kind of connection that the guys had that helped us really get through that second season. But like I said, it was, you know, the Shannon Browns, the Josh Powells, the Adam Morrison. You know, it was those guys who didn't get all the notoriety, but, you know, they put their hard hat on. They came to work every day, you know. Me, Craig Hodges, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Brian Shaw, Jim Clemens, Frank Hamlin, you know, the video guys, you know, Chris Bodakin, Pat O'Keefe, our training staff, you know, Chip Schaefer, Gary Vitti, you know, we had Alex McKechnie, you know, brilliant mind with, you know, helping keep guys' bodies going for the whole season. We had Marco Urivoy, who was this great masseuse, Marco Nunez, who was the D-League and the NBA, you know, and the Lakers trainer. But we all had this camaraderie. When we went to Summer League that summer, we were all dead tired. You know, B. Shaw and Kurt Rambis had the coach. They
Froze. Coach. Hello? Yeah, I got you. You froze for a second.
Okay, so Rudy Garza-Duenas, our equipment manager, he'd have the big suite. He would get food, and we go up there every night. He cooked. We had a camaraderie, and we had a culture, you know, that was led by, you know, Phil, Kobe, and Dr. Buss overall. You know, Dr. Buss set the tone, but it was that culture that really carried us through that second.
Now, as a coach, like, people don't understand, how stressful is it to be a coach, especially in the league?
Man, it's stressful, but it's a fun stress if you love it. You know, if you do this and the stress gets to you, you chose the wrong business. The stress is kind of what gets me up out of bed. Like, I don't mind it. It keeps you young. I know some people say it makes them old. For me, it keeps me young because it keeps me sharp. because I believe in stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And my mom was always she always preached to over prepare. And so I have that same mentality, but it's stressful in the way that there's a huge responsibility that you have to your group. And you have the responsibility to be diligent about your work, to be diligent about your details, like I told you, to do your homework, to make sure you study. So there's a lot of film being watched. I'm happy this last 2 seasons, I've just been able to watch a game. The year before I had DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix, I did all his development work, and I basically lived with him through his rookie year and took him through his rookie year. And so, that was a different level of stress and of coaching. But again, it was the attention to detail. It was the preparation. And that's what most young coaches don't understand, is the preparation that it takes to be a great coach. I implore every high school coach to go spend time with a college coach or an MBA program, find out how they prepare for a game, prepare your high school team the same way. Because that's what I did at Venice. I prepared a scouting report for every game. I had a walkthrough. I was rehearsing. You're always practicing. You've got to continue to practice and sharpen your blade so that when you get out there and you get in front of Kobe Bryant and Bynum and Pau Gasol and Phil Jackson and B. Shaw looking, and they're like, all right, what do you have to say? You don't freeze up. So, you work on those things now, and it just flows out of you, when the time comes. So my brother Hines says you got to work on your chops.
So you move on, how hard was it for you to leave the Lakers to come to the Knicks for, to coach?
Well, after the 2011 season, when we lost to Dallas, they let our whole staff go. Mike Brown didn't retain me. So I was working with individual players, had Ryan Hollins, did some pre-draft with Festus Ezeli, Jeff Taylor, John Jenkins, did some advanced scouting for Steve Silas, wherever he was coaching. Always made sure I had advanced scouting assignments. So I did that for a couple years. And then D. Fish, Phil gets the job in New York, reached out to him just really to congratulate him, told him that if he had any interest in running the triangle that, I'm still teaching it, would be happy to join any staff. He told me he would forward my information to the next coach that he hires, which is fair. And that's what he did. Then I saw Fish got hired. I had just spent time with Fish because I had worked with Austin Hatch. I don't know if you remember the kid. Austin Hatch went to Michigan, survived the 2 plane crashes. Mm-hmm. My 3rd championship ring is what I call him, because I was fortunate enough for his family to choose me to do his rehab. And so myself, my friend Janet Jen, who's one of the best physical therapists, athletic trainers around, and my friend Alex Harms, who was a coach at Exos, we did his entire rehab program and got him back playing. So D. Fish gave me tickets to the OKC Lakers game, came down. You know how great D. Fish is, man. He took pictures with Austin, spent time talking to him, made sure Kobe came and talked to him. And so I just text Fish like, hey, man, congrats. Like, great, I'm just happy for you, man. Like, that was it. Then a few days later, reached out, like, didn't hear about him hiring anybody. Say, hey, if you're looking for anybody, man, I'd love to come have your back, man, and be a part of your staff and help you grow this thing. And I was actually, Bill Duffy was getting ready to hire me to work with Andrew Wiggins, who was coming into the draft. So I had driven to Santa Barbara to meet with Wiggins and do all these things, and we were set to start working. So I actually flew to New York for the draft. While I was in New York at the draft, Fish and I were texting back and forth. We were just going to meet up, have dinner, and talk, see what was available. What ends up happening is he didn't realize how busy the draft was. He thought he had more free time. I said, man, not a player anymore, bro. They have your whole day monopolized right now. And so he asked me where, when I was going back to LA, I didn't have a return ticket. So he offered to fly me back on the private jet with him. So I'm not turning that down, of course. Hey, I'll see you in the morning. We didn't even have an interview. We stayed awake the whole flight and we talked for 6 hours cross country. Family, experiences, basketball. And when we got off the plane, he offered me a job. It was one of the easiest decisions I've ever made, because I always, I got to play against Fish a little bit, or we were kind of peers, we're contemporaries in that way. And so I've seen Fish, and we've been around each other a lot, and we've always had good rapport with each other, and when I coached with the Lakers, we always had great interactions. He was one of the players who was always really inquisitive about my scouting reports and what, Darren Williams and those guys were rocking at the time. So it was like, what's D. Will doing, in these situations on different plays. And he was such a student of the game that I knew he was going to be a pretty good coach. So it was an easy decision.
After 2 years, obviously it didn't work out.
Yeah.
With the Knicks. So as a coach, when you guys get let go, how does it feel for you personally? And then in your mind, you say, okay, I got to do this better. And then you're trying to get your next position.
The good part about when the Knicks let me go is I had a year left on my contract. So I had a little cushion to fall on. So that made that process a lot easier, a lot more palatable. But to your point, I knew there was things that I had to get better at. And I had to look in the mirror and because when something fails like that, I hate when you hear an assistant who comes back and talks about what somebody else didn't do in their role on that team. No, we all weren't good enough. So let's just start there. I thought we had a great staff. We had Brian Keefe, Josh Longstaff, Jim Clemens, Kurt Rambis. We were fine. We had enough brain power. We just didn't get it done. So I had to really reflect back and figure out from my standpoint and from what I did, what I could do better the next time around. And, I had those real conversations with myself and think I'm a better coach today because of that Knicks experience.
So then this past season, you went to Japan.
Before that I did DeAndre Ayton's pre-draft.
Yeah, pre-draft, and then you say, you know what, you finally got a position in Japan. What made you go overseas and say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance to go overseas?
EB, I'm that guy who when people ask me what would you do to be a head coach, I go anywhere in the world. I've said that, and I got the chance to prove it because I got a job offer in Japan and I had to jump at it. And it's probably as far as cultural experience and learning about myself and, learning, about my leadership ability. It's one of the best decisions I've made. I coached for a team called Veltec Shizuoka. We were in the B3. So I took a third division, you can't have an ego when you say you want to do this. You have to just be willing to go where you need to go to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. And I went over there, and we didn't turn it around like I wanted to. We had a lot of tough breaks. My leading scorer, a kid named Reggie Warren, actually not a kid, veteran dude, he's 37. The game before I took over, he breaks his hand. He was averaging 27 and 15. And then my backup point guard got hurt 2 minutes into my first game. And so there was just all these things happening around the team in my first head coaching experience. And I had to navigate those things and still try to create an enjoyable experience for the players. And I think I accomplished that. And I think it was a first year franchise as well. Takehara Katsuya, the GM, Kota Matsunaga, the president of the team. We were like a family, and we really got to spend time building something from the ground up. And that was a great experience, in my first go round. And, they made a great impression on me. And I hope I left them with, a lot of good information and set up for success in the future. And I think I did.
How did you navigate the language barrier?
Well, I had a couple of translators. My first translator was a little shaky. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he was quite saying exactly what I was saying to the team. So there was a real lost in translation. So I'm getting mad at a player, and they're looking at me because the coach told them he's translating. So they think he's telling them what I said. And I'm like, he didn't run the pick and roll coverage, right? So this dude's like, this dude is crazy. And so we ended up changing the translator to a kid who's he's going to be a heck of a coach one day. I hope to bring him over here, a kid named Masahiro Endo. He was phenomenal for me, and I had a couple of players that spoke Japanese too. Naoki used to translate for me. It was one of my point guard. He ended up being my starting point guard, actually, because I lost my starting point guard to a torn ACL in the third game. And it was just, it was just fun. I had a kid from Nigeria who spent 7 years, Philip Abu, and he spoke Japanese, and fluently, which was great. And then, I had 2 other American kids, a kid named Mike Ojo, who I brought over, who never got to play, but he's going to tear that league up next year. And then I had a kid named Musa Dama, who you're going to hear his name pretty soon, because he's a heck of a talent. And I just think, in my career, I've just been fortunate to end up in these great situations with these great people. And they really changed the trajectory of my career, by giving me that opportunity. B3, whatever it was, man, great coaches over there. I had fun matching wits with the other coaches. It was a lot of fun, and I can't wait till I get that opportunity again. Hopefully it's with those 3 letters on my chest in that NBA. I'm gonna work my ass off to get it.
So how hard is it now, obviously you're trying to get a coaching job here back in the league. How hard is it to get a job back into the league?
Yeah, listen, these league jobs are very scarce, and they're like, think about how hard it is to get a college scholarship when you're a college player. It's that level of difficulty, because there's some really good coaches out here, and with the analytics being added into the game, now you're bringing another element of coach in who's not just necessarily a basketball guy, who that's taking up a spot as well. So there's more people in less spots, really, if you think about it. And then, what's it going to look like after the pandemic? How are coaching staffs going to change? Because these staffs are huge right now. Are they going to start limiting the staffs a little bit? I don't think they will, because we have the greatest owners in sports. Mm-hmm. Serious about not only winning, but moving the game forward for the next generation. And so I think we'll be okay there, but it's tough. These jobs are hard to get. I mean, I think I have a pretty decent resume, and I've been passed over for jobs. I interviewed for Agua Caliente with the Clippers, and I came down to being one of the finalists, and I didn't get the job, and Doc Rivers, who we have the same agent, and he's the head coach there and the president, and his son was roommates with my nephew Max at Irvine. But that doesn't matter. I didn't see him, and I wasn't salty the next time I saw him. I was salty for a couple of days. I didn't get a job, but I wasn't salty at him. You understand what I'm saying? And I had to look in the mirror and say, why didn't you get that job? Not why didn't he give me the job? I didn't get it. I didn't earn it. Mm-hmm. That, for young coaches, just, I was fortunate to be around coaches that had that taught me that humility. And we all have to make sure that we have that, because we're just fortunate to be a part of this game for as long as we can be. Treasure every day.
I know for a fact, I predict you would definitely be in the league next year, because there definitely will be some openings. And I'm sure Doc Rivers there's going to be an opening in Doc Rivers. There's going to be some coaches leaving, I'm pretty sure, getting a head coaching job. So yeah, he has a good staff, and I'm sure he has a good list of guys, that he is kind of grooming and waiting on. When my number is called, the one thing I can promise you, whether it's, Doc or, somebody else, the one thing I can promise you is I'll be ready. I will not have to get ready. I got 2 more questions for you. I want to talk about the relationship your dad had with Kareem.
Oh, cool.
Obviously, I know with your fam, your dad was, Walt Hazzard. I know Kareem, helped change. He changed. He converted. Yeah. But he always kept, he kept the name, Walt, as a professional and stuff like that. Can you talk about that relationship and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just the importance of, real brotherhood and camaraderie. Kareem loves my dad. My dad truly loves Kareem. They went on that journey to Islam. They kind of went on that journey together at that time. And, my dad was fortunate and he took a mini Hajj over to, I think it was Pakistan at the time. And what he learned of Islam was, more of that Nation of Islam, it was more of the right of the movement Islam. Well, he was fortunate to go and learn. And, he was like, I was praying and next to a white guy, this is not, race didn't matter when he went and learned what true Islam was. And he brought that back. And I think he shared a lot of that experience with Kareem. And, that on top of the UCLA connection, plus both of them being from the East Coast, and my dad's a Philly guy, and being West Coast transplants, their love for jazz. They just had so many different connections. They were like soulmates on a different level. It was no surprise to me many a days. My dad, I know a lot of people don't know, my dad spent about, I think it was 8 months in ICU or something like that, before he passed. And we were just, our family, we were there every day, my mom, my brothers, his sisters, my cousins. And you would never be surprised to walk in that room and who you see in the corner with his legs crossed, reading a book or, reading the newspaper. Kareem would just be sitting over in the corner, hours. My dad at one point wasn't even conscious. And he sat there for hours, and it showed me the brotherhood that they shared. And, that camaraderie was really grown from what Coach Wooden established at UCLA. I don't think people give enough attention to how special what he built there truly was, because these men are still close to this day. Lucius Allen's wife stopped by my parents' house when she was walking through their neighborhood the other day. They weren't even teammates, but they have this bond, and Kareem and my dad really shared a special bond, from, like I said, the jazz to Islam to Coach Wooden, and the way Kareem treated me when I was with the Lakers. I mean, he treats me like a son. When I coached at University of Portland, I was the big man coach. One of my guys, Ben Sullivan, is assistant coach for the Milwaukee Bucks now. Great young guy. And I flew back to LA my first weekend there. I spent one day with Kurt Rambis, and he taught me so many great big man drills and things to do and philosophies to use. And then I got to spend 4 hours the next day with Kareem, me and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, teaching me how to drill big men and different things to do and showing me where to put guys on the court. Like I have the cheat sheet as far as I'm concerned, as far as getting this information from these guys. And that all came because of my dad's love and Kareem's love for my dad. They were brothers. I won't even call them friends. They were brothers.
And your dad's name was Walt. Your mom's name was Jaleesa.
Yeah.
Different world. Different world.
All right. So that is actually a true story. My dad and Mr. Cosby, being from Philadelphia, obviously had a relationship. We used to go to the taping of A Different World. Man, that was like a after-school trip, go hang out with everybody on set. Whenever we were in New York, we got to go to the Cosby Show set. And when they did A Different World, Dawn Lewis, who is, the RA basically, and then, a student there, and then Sinbad, who's the coach. That story is based on, my mom and dad's kind of story coming out of UCLA. My mom was the first Black song girl at UCLA. My dad being the star player on the team, and then they go and they get married. So yes, Walter and Jaleesa from A Different World are named after my parents. And so it's like, EB, all this rich history that I'm so fortunate to be connected to, and what basketball has allowed me to do more than anything it's allowed me to share these same experiences with other people who wouldn't. It's not normal. I know it. I've always known since I was a kid it wasn't normal. So I used to always want, not to show off, but I wanted people to come here because it's like, you don't know who you might see and you get to be around these people. And I feel like basketball was like always that connector that allowed me to share with guys from all kinds of different backgrounds. You know, some guys who, you know, were doing better than us, but it was just, you knew that we all watched these guys on TV. And I just, when I was a player, I shared it. And then when I became a coach at Venice, you know, that was kind of what I want. I wanted these guys to have that same ambition. I wanted them to be able to dream as big as I was able to dream when I was a kid because of what I was exposed to and what my parents were so fortunate to surround us with, and my brothers who've achieved at such a high level. You know, my brother Yakub, great lawyer. My brother Jalal, who's running nonprofits and has this great math mind, and he's a great chef and can do. My brother DJ Khalil, who has 4 Grammys. You know, like I know, especially for us, right, for African Americans, right, for people of color, my Latino brothers, I wanted to expose all of them to this. And my team was like this big melting pot of every race you could think of. And they all spent time in my parents' backyard and came to barbecues and got to touch my dad and got to have him touch them and give them information and put his hand on them when they weren't doing good or when their crazy coach was yelling at them for some crazy reason. You know, they had these experiences, and the game has allowed me to share that. And I'm so grateful to have this game in my life and to be able to use it as a tool to share with other people. And if this interview we did impacts one person or inspires one person to say, you know what, man, I'm just going to go to my high school and become a coach and I'm going to work my way up the ladder, man, call me. I'll help you. Because there's more than one way to skin a cat, man. You don't have to start in the video room. You don't have to be a GA. I started as a head coach because I knew one day I wanted to be a head coach. So I needed to know what it felt like to call a timeout. I needed to know what it felt like to get a technical foul, what it felt like to make the wrong call and lose the game for your team. I needed to feel that so that I could be prepared for this opportunity that I feel is coming in this next, hopefully 3 to 5 years. We'll be having, and I'll be right back here with you.
It's going to happen. Coach, I might call you up and be like, hey.
No, if you don't call me, I'm calling you because I'll be right back here, man.
So what thing,
you know how we roll, man.
The Knicks, like I have, like, and I, you know, I was there a very long time. Yeah. There's certain coaches that's always like, I'm always going to remember. And I will always call a friend, even though I don't talk to you all the time because I've learned, I just watch. And like, and I'm like, he's going to be somebody. You know, he is somebody now, but he's going to be bigger.
I appreciate that, man. And it's because of people like yourself, man. Like you guys, all the people I met, you know, I remember all the brothers around the court, you know, I just remember talking to them, and the guys that did the valet parking across the street, you know, over in the parking lot, you know, those were my guys. And you guys all, man, had an impact on me because, you know, you guys didn't know it, but you were teaching me the culture. What's New York? Y'all in New York. So I was trying to get some of that from you. Like I tried to get that greatness from my dad. Like I tried to get those brains from my mom and that business savvy. Like I was trying to pull that out of you guys and take some of that with me. So, you know, you guys are a part of my story, man. And I appreciate the time we got to spend together, man. We had some funny time.
I definitely appreciate the time, Coach. Last question is, what would you tell 21-year-old Rasheed Hazzard?
Keep dreaming, man. No dream is too big. Like if you can dream it, if you can see it, you can be it. And I've always believed that. And it's what I've believed, and I would just tell myself that again, man. Go for it. There's nothing outside of your reach. Whatever you can see, just go get it. Don't hesitate. Confidence, full speed ahead, and do it. And the one thing I would tell 21-year-old Rasheed Hazzard is do everything with joy. Do everything with joy. I was a really hard-driven young man, and my first year coaching, is what actually taught me what joy really is, because I didn't experience it at the level that I wanted to as a player. But for some reason in that first season as a coach, even though we were 0-16 in league, it was that first time that around the game, I actually felt true joy and felt like I found it. All right, I'm on to it. So if I have that one thing to tell him and to tell these other youngsters, hey, joy, man, because joy brings about positivity. And when you're positive, man, you attract good things. So stay positive, do it with joy, man, and help the next man and be kind, and success is going to happen.
Coach,
we have it in us.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Like I said, I know it's going to happen. I can't wait to make that phone call, that text, and be like, Coach, I'm proud of you.
I appreciate it, man.
And I'm always going to root for you from afar.
Thank you, man. And
and I'm coming to LA. I'm coming to LA to come visit.
Yeah, you make sure you know. When I get the head coaching job, I'm buying the ticket, man. You're gonna be my guest, brother. And please make sure you tell just all the New York fam, man, just everybody that was out there on that court with us before the game. And y'all know who you are. I can say it myself. Hello, miss you guys, and we will connect again on that sideline. That's for sure.
I appreciate your time, Coach.
Thank you.
In a few.
Thank you.
All right, bye.